Dreamscape presents Sinder by Kathleen Kaufman. Narrated by Arielle Delisle. 1. Ainsley, 1924. The stories told of fae folk who hid in the shadow of the wood when the sun burned bright in the Irish sky, creatures that snuck to the River Lee only after the fire and heat had slipped over the horizon, leaving the waking world in darkness. There, they would fill their tiny buckets and pails, hauling them back to their fairy mounds and caves so they could boil the herbs and leaves they had collected from the ancient forest. If a baby was set to the colic or a fever had risen that brought the sweats and delirium, then one could sit very quietly on the edge of the wood, a small dish of black salt and a bit of bread in hand. If the fae were feeling generous, if you were quiet enough, and if your need was pure, then they might bring you one of their tiny vials containing a foul-smelling poultice or a murky elixir in exchange for the tribute. The elders cautioned you could not trust the fae entirely. They were as likely to bring you a tea made from the autumn crocus or nightshade as they were to heal the rash or calm the croup. Still, especially when a young one lay ill, face waxy with fever and eyes unfocused, it was not uncommon to take the risk. Ainsley Robertson wrapped her pale hair up into a knot and pulled her rough wool shawl tighter around her as she perched at the top of the knoll, on the edge of the wood. The sun was setting across the River Lee, and the water was ablaze with the dying fire of late fall. The air was sharp and carried the hint of the freeze of winter. She had no black salt and had eaten the bread. The fae would need to concede that her stomach was more important than their tribute. But she was quiet, and her need was strong, if not pure. The thing she needed was an end. A tea of weaver's broom or strychnine tea, a means to send the spirit that grew inside her womb back to the place it came from. Or, if the fae were made of the same cowling lot as the elders, then Ainsley wished for a draught of hemlock or wormwood so that she would join the night entire. So she sat watching the sun disappear below the horizon, watching the darkness deepen and overtake the hillside. The fae did not appear, and Ainsley pulled herself off the damp heath and walked back up the hill and along the familiar path to a huddle of farmhouses accented only by the sheep and goat paddocks and the field mare milling about in her stall. Smoke rose from the chimney of her home, and Ainsley could smell mutton stew and fresh bread. Her stomach twisted painfully, reminding...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?